Welcome everyone to MPA University's Hybrid Masterclass Week 2. My name is Lauren Huffman. I'm the Director of Marketing Operations at MeetingPlay Plus Eventry, and I am very excited to be here as your moderator for today's session. Today, we're going to be discussing how to seamlessly transition to a hybrid event. It's a very popular topic we've been seeing in the industry right now, and we're excited to kind of get a whole conversation going around it with today's chat. Today, we're going to be discussing the chat with our speaker and MPA University's very own Brianna Callahan. Brianna joined today. Brianna joined the MeetingPlay operations team in 2020 and eventually transitioned into a sales role. She was promoted to Senior Sales Support Manager in 2022. In her current role, she directs sales enablement initiatives, supports high-profile projects, and leads team training on product and sales processes. She started her career in the events industry during her senior year of college at Towson University in a position managing high-profile fundraisers for fine art studios. Since then, she's gathered event and marketing experience in a variety of industries, including wine and spirits, health and fitness, government, and Brianna is currently residing in Baltimore, Maryland with her husband, Dennis. They enjoy traveling, visiting breweries, and relaxing with their dog, Dirk. Please join me in welcoming Brianna as we get started on today's session. Hey, Brianna.
Hey, Lauren. How's it going?
Awesome. Well, I'm excited for you to get started today. How are you doing?
I'm good. I'm excited. Good afternoon. Good morning to everyone. This is a really hot topic, and I'm really excited to kind of talk to everyone about it.
Awesome. All right, I'll let you get started. We'll talk soon.
Right. Thanks, Lauren. All right, everyone. So just to start off, we do have a poll. I would like everyone that is in this session to take part in our poll. It will really help us drive the conversation as we go through today, and also help us with follow-up questions or follow-up conversations that we'll have after the session takes place. But let's move in a little bit to our topic, why this topic is important. So as everyone knows in our industry, the state of the world requires event planners and companies to be more prepared for scenarios, both in person and virtual. Planning has really created a state of flux, and COVID-19 has set a new normal for us. And what we've been seeing, not only through our own clients, but also across the industry, is a few different things. One, the obstacles we need to be aware of. How do we keep audiences engaged? You know, we're not in person anymore. We're not bumping into people at the coffee shop. You know, there are your different obstacles in that space of keeping everyone engaged and avoiding virtual fatigue. How do we connect those users? There's on-site users, there's virtual users. We want them to be looking for all the ways that they can get together, all the ways that they can connect with one another. And then what do we do when our audience wants to cancel or they feel unsafe? If you have an on-site event, and you know, we ran into this right over the holiday season where people didn't feel comfortable going out anymore, and we want to be able to accommodate those audiences, and we want them to feel confident and comfortable. Next, what decisions are they making when they're trying to decide to pivot? You know, we have, are you postponing? Are you moving to a hybrid format? This is another topic that we're going to go into a little bit more detail in a little bit. Then as a tech provider, what kind of advice are we giving people during this process? What are the topics and best practices of making that move and making those decisions? This is another topic that we'll cover in a little bit more detail as we go through today, but the goal is to give each client a unique experience of bringing their vision to life. We start our conversations gathering an absurd amount of detail and to make sure that we are proposing the best solutions catered to what their vision is. From graphics to functionality to the simple attendee journey, we want every click or every step to be the experience that the client is envisioning. All right, so let's move into talking about pivoting versus postponing. Let's define this topic a little bit. Postponing is carbon copying your event and your event plans and then moving them to a later date. There are pros and cons around this topic. So the pros for postponing are you get to hold on to your venue. You've built the frameworks, you've built the maps, you know what everything was going into that venue and that space, and you'd be able to keep that in all of your planning proceedings. Also, you can keep those current plans consistent. Those speakers, the sound stages, the lunch and learns, the coffee shops, the hotel planning, all of that kind of stays in the same place. You're just moving it to that different date. Now, the cons in postponing. Will your attendees be available on that following date? You know, if we're moving this a month back, if we're moving it 6 months back, you know, are we giving the attendees enough time to accommodate them still coming? Are we able to accommodate all of the vendors? Hotel, food and bev, third parties, entertainment, event tech partners? Are these new dates available for all of them to be moving to? Do they have other things going on? Just something that we need to consider. There's no guarantee that those dates will be concrete. If we're moving from spring to fall, there could be different, you know, spikes in the atmosphere. There could be changes, and those new dates might not always be a perfect fit for what's going on, and then we might need to change again. Another consideration is that flexibility for your speakers, your sponsors, and exhibitors. You know, we as partners and we as companies all plan these trade shows and these events out really far in advance. So are we able to fit this adjustment into our calendar? And then finally, are your partners able to accommodate your new date? As event planners, we have a lot of things going on. We have events going on. We have our busy seasons. We have our slower seasons. And so as a partner, are you able to accommodate these new dates with the resources that you have available? So now let's talk about pivoting. Pivoting is keeping the event dates the same, but switching the experience from virtual to on-site or vice versa. There's definitely some pros in this space as well. Allowing the two attendee types can really broaden your audience. And we'll get into a little more detail about that as well. Keeping the event dates consistent can be especially important for an event where attendees are purchasing tickets. If they're not able to attend that next date that you've moved because you've postponed, you might have to work into refunds. This offers flexibility to speakers, vendors, exhibitors, and third parties, which is great, especially when you're recruiting sponsors that might still have corporate or restricted limited travel mandates. And then on that larger audience, talking about broadening that audience, you can accommodate the visibility potential for your sponsors to increase their ROI. If you have an event and there were 500 people on site and that's all that your venue can accommodate, you could have 3,000, you could have 30,000 people who are virtual. You can really widen that range of visibility and all of the people that are coming to your event. And of course, there are always some cons to pivoting as well. There's some extra planning involved. This includes having previously contracted an experienced and flexible partner who can work with you in this space. And there also are some potentially extra budget considerations that you're going to need to make. And we'll talk through that a little bit as well. So now that we've decided to pivot and not to postpone, let's talk about some of the considerations here. Have you discussed timelines or options with your vendor? Pivoting can be relatively simple or it can be very complex. It depends on how you plan to get from point A to point B. A strong partner will also be able to consult you on all the steps going on-site to virtual or virtual to on-site. They should provide you with a realistic timeline and how they plan to provide these services to you. For example, here at MP, we have a dedicated account management team that meets with you to review your statement of work and your unique event, and they create a tailored timeline that includes deadlines for deliverables, walkthroughs, trainings, testing, and all the necessary steps to make sure that you're feeling confident about how the event kicks off. We want our clients to have clear expectations for their own work as well as expectations from us as a partner. Next, having the pivot conversation early on and asking your partner the right questions. Are they able to pivot? Is this something that, are they only an on-site vendor? Are they a virtual vendor? Do they have the tools to meet in the middle? Have they done it in the past? You want an experienced vendor who knows all of the small details that we don't always consider when we're talking this through. And they might bring up points that you might not have considered yourself. What does pivot actually mean to them? And are they able to accommodate you from start to finish? And then finally, do they offer both on-site and virtual services, or are they going to use a third party? Using third parties isn't always a bad thing. It's a good thing, but you need to know who you're working with and what they're able to accommodate. And this adds hands in the pot to all of the different details that we have going on. And so these are things that we need to keep in mind. A use case of this is we have done quite a few full service 360 approaches to events where we were able to accommodate on-site moving to hybrid and also on-site moving to full virtual. Recently, we did have an event that was always an on-site event and moved full virtual with 70,000 attendees. So let's keep going. So in making these considerations, Let's talk about the different levels of complexity in pivoting and the different projects that you'll be considering as you're working through the event that you have going on. So we'll say you have a partner and you're ready to move forward with kind of deciding what you want to do going forward. So high complexity is what we would consider from virtual to on-site. This is less common, but absolutely worth discussing today. If you're doing a full pivot from virtual to on-site, you're going to need a venue, hotel blocks, travel information, food and beverage, safety planning protocols, and the lead time for this can take anywhere from a minimum of 12 weeks to 6 months. I feel like the audience here is probably going to have a really good understanding of what it feels like to plan an on-site event. In past lives, I've planned on-site events and trade shows, and I can say that some of those things took a year, if not 2 years out, to hold down the venue, get all of your sponsors, make sure you have a good action plan for everyone, and that was pre-COVID. Another thing that adds to the high complexity is the safety protocols. You'll need to be aware of current health restrictions and attendee traffic accommodations because these things are important to our attendees today. You'll need to work with a new venue to determine the safety mandates, vaccine cards, masks, these are all things that you're going to have to share with your on-site attendees. And you'll also need to manage traffic, check-in lines, seating charts, trade show floor directions and flow. And so in this space, as we're talking about these more high complexity events, how can your partners help you formulate a safe and hybrid event? Does your partner have plans for managing traffic during check-in? Can they prioritize social distancing or networking from across the room? An example of this would be mobile apps, allowing people to connect and try to connect, but maybe I want to meet with someone who is on site, but I'm not necessarily okay with meeting within 6 feet unless we're outside. And through mobile app technology and other event tech, we're able to share that information with someone we want to meet up with. And so we can go grab a coffee and sit outside and connect with one another. So let's now hop to medium complexity. I would consider one of the main medium complexity on-site situations is going from on-site to virtual. If you're canceling your on-site event and moving to a virtual platform, this can take a minimum of 6 to up to 12 weeks, depending upon the complexity of what you have going on. This is another great use case recently where we did have someone cancel their full on-site event and move to virtual, and that was one where they had over 70,000 attendees. Another instance in the medium complexity realm is on-site to hybrid, where an on-site event keeps their live audience but makes it smaller and then expands the virtual space to accommodate new regulations or attendee types. This is medium complexity to having to kind of plan for two events that are going on, but also accommodating those that might have wanted to be on site, but then are moving to virtual. Are you giving them the same experience? Are you giving them the same networking capabilities? And so we want to keep all of those experiences inclusive. And we'll talk about that in just a second. And then moving on to low complexity, which is at the end of the day, always what we want. We don't want to stress, and we want to have everything planned out from the beginning to the end. So in this situation, hybrid would be the best option for low complexity, varying in one direction or the other. So if you're already planning for hybrid, you could bump up the on-site attendee list if people are feeling more confident, or if you're putting out pre-event polls, quizzes, and surveys and finding that people are more comfortable with coming on site. Or if you're finding from those polls, quizzes, and surveys that a large chunk of your audience is not comfortable, then you can start to pivot more into virtual and have a smaller gathering on site. Planning for both situations is the best case scenario. You can flex in either direction based on local limitations or changes. This is also less of a pivot and really accommodating what we're seeing as a new normal. Planning for both not only gives your audience the power of choice, but it also gives you the opportunity to not scramble at the last minute to use the event format that fits whatever those current protocols are. So let's say that we're going forward with a hybrid event. Let's talk about the pros of planning hybrid from the start, what hiccups to avoid, and how this impacts your budget, the opportunities for your attendees. So let's define our attendee types. Virtual, anyone signing in from their computer or device from a remote location to your event. On-site, any attendees traveling to be in person to your event. Now here's the one that we don't always necessarily think about, and this is your mixed attendee. That's going to be somebody who is able to switch between user types during and after the event. When we're talking about broadening our audience, Something that's really important to consider here is where we are in the virtual space now really allows for attendees to custom fit their experience based on what they have going on in their lives. This is actually something we've seen come up in some of our recent events. And, traveling can be really difficult, but we want to get back out there. We want to be back in person. We want to see what's going on in the world. We have a little bit of FOMO. But in this case, if I had something going on that weekend, we'll say I'm going on a trip with my family, but I really wanted to attend this event that's out of state. I necessarily could come in as an on-site attendee for the first 2 days and be able to get sit-in sessions, meet and greet with people, but I don't want to miss that third day, but I have to be home. I can now come in as a virtual attendee and experience the rest of the event from that remote location. And this flexibility has really added to events because you're not going to lose attendees based on dates anymore. There's also things that come up, changes in workplace, changes in family life. I could have been planning to go on site and be a part of an event, but something has now changed and now I need to be remote. But I can still come, I can still participate, I can still see those sponsors, I can still attend those sessions. This attendee is going to be really important as we move forward into the future. Let's talk about accommodating our audience and vendors. How many of your attendees will be virtual versus on-site? And this can be in flux. We can have a lot of on-site attendees and then something changes and then a lot of virtual attendees. But it is something that you'll need to be tracking as you're planning the event out and working with your partner to create a good environment. What kind of sponsors or exhibit plans do you plan to offer? Are you going to do both on-site trade shows and a virtual trade show? Are these going to be the same people? We'll come to that in just a second. And then also, will these attendee types be encouraged to mingle and have a shared experience or not? For MeetingPlay and Eventry, I would say that the shared experience model is a little more inclusive. And so from this standpoint, we really want to have the best experience for them. And so that's what we would always recommend. But there are situations where you could create a completely different virtual experience from the on-site experience. And our team would be able to, and a good partner also would be able to talk you through these processes. Finally, planning that hybrid event, there's a bit of ethics that comes into this piece. You need to appropriately consider your audience's comfort, allowing them to switch between admission types. In the world we live in today, we ethically need to provide an inclusive environment for everyone. So let's talk about that attendee journey. We're now in the hybrid space. We're moving forward with a hybrid event. We have a great partner. We've made all the considerations that we need. We really are recommending that inclusive environment. So let's talk through some of the ways to keep your attendees connected and engaged, no matter how they choose to participate. One is in sessions. So we're going to see from this slide here, we have a virtual platform, but we're also looking at someone's phone. So we're seeing the session take place on the right here. And then on the far right, you can see the different options we have, such as chat, Q&A, notes, polls, quizzes, and surveys, and the capability to rate the session as well as some information down here on the bottom. Now, the great thing about this space is this is actually the same session. So the person who has their phone up is going to be able to participate in all of the same tools that a virtual attendee is looking at. This has also come up recently because we want to be very considerate of people's personal bubbles. We aren't in the space anymore where we can run around with a microphone that has been shared between different attendees. And so through the mobile app and this connected experience, the speaker that is up on stage is able to see all of the live chats and live questions that's coming from both attendee types. As you can see, it looks like Matt is one of our hybrid attendees where he's switching between the two different attendee types. You can see for his first question, he was on site, but it looks like he might have had to leave. And now he's virtual, where he is claiming to now be virtual. And so he's able to kind of go back and forth and people can ping him or communicate with him no matter where he's logging in from. And for that Q&A, the notes and the polls, all of that is also a shared experience. We want everyone to make sure that they're answering the same polls, quizzes, and surveys, that they're able to take those notes and send them to themselves afterwards. But also for the Q&A, if the speaker is doing an actual live Q&A, we want to be able to make sure that they're seeing all the questions come through. And we do also have an upvoting capability where if I see a question that's being asked by someone, no matter where they're sitting, I can actually vote that question to the top to make sure we're not going to have a lot of duplicates. And the speaker or the moderator in those sessions are going to be able to see that that's a really hot topic or something that's important to our audience. And so through this shared connection, we can make sure that everyone is kind of focusing in on the same things, having the same conversation, and nobody kind of feels like an island. Another way is collaborating through our collaboration tool. So one way, as you can see on the right here, sorry guys, my left and my right are a little thrown off. What you can see on the right here is a collaboration tool. And so you can see all the different people that are remote and are chiming in. You can actually see me down there in the bottom right. You can see the Q&A going over on the side. But adding that hybrid twist to it, we're actually looking at someone on the left that's in a booth watching this collaboration take place. And so we can actually bring the people who are in person into these sessions and have them also have a voice during these conversations. These can be networking happy hours. These can be demos from the exhibitors. These can also be small breakouts. There's no limitation on what we can do in these spaces to make sure that everyone is having that shared experience, but also feeling safe. Next is the photo booth tool. This is actually one of my favorites because in terms of its functionality, it doesn't always add the foundation to an event, but what it does add is fun. And we want to have fun at these events. And so from what you can see here on the left is that someone virtually is taking a photo, and then they're going to be able to add that photo to the gallery, add stickers, add fun backgrounds. But then what's happening over here in the right is you can see in the background of this image, again, feeling safe, everyone is socially distanced, and we can see the scrolling of the different photos that people are taking in the background. And this is just a really fun, friendly reminder that there is another audience there and that we're all collaborating together. And I think that sometimes we feel like if there is a virtual audience, the in-person audience will forget that they're there. So this is just kind of showcasing that there are tools to bring them together and have the best experience possible. All right, next, our exhibitors, which are sometimes the absolute heart of the event that we have. And what we want to showcase here is, you know, being on site versus being virtual should not limit them, one, in visibility or capability of meeting and greeting with all of the attendees or getting the most out of their investment. So actually, if you look at the right here, you can see our Chief Sales Officer, Frank Leonard, with our channel partner manager, Matt Dodson, two great people that are in platform and you can reach out to anytime if you have questions. But they were on site for an event recently. I think this was fall of last year, and they had a great time. But the coolest thing about this is in the hybrid space, we were also able to have a virtual booth. And there you could have a different set of exhibitors that were able to connect with people virtually and those that are on site. You're able to see in some cases, and I wish I would have added a photo now that I'm thinking about it, you can see these from your phone. So we're able to connect both attendee types on site and virtual, but still add all of that branding and exposure. Another piece to add to this one is that in this space, we're just looking at the booth, but when it comes to setting up those sponsorships and giving all of your sponsors and exhibitors the most ROI, we're really able in the virtual space to create an unlimited amount of brand experience. Are they able to sponsor sessions? Are they able to have their logo on the homepage? Are there interstitial ads or different pre-event ads? We can do broadcast channels now. There's a wealth of ways that we can get the visibility that sponsors are always looking for in the virtual space while they're also standing on site. And then finally, gamification. This is really the pride and joy of MeetingPlay, is finding ways to keep people engaged, but also incentivizing those behaviors for our clients. So you can see on the left here, we kind of have that leaderboard on our phone. So that's for our on-site attendees. And then we also have the same leaderboard that's going on in the virtual platform. And what we're doing here is able to work with our clients on what actions are most important to them. Where do you want your attendees going? What do you want them collaborating with? Is networking the most important? Are your sponsors most important? Are engaging within the sessions most important? And we can kind of customize the point values to drive people around the sessions and around the platform to make sure that you as a client are getting the absolute most out of your platform, but also your on-site experience. And there's so many different ways and customizations that we can move through. We've done trivia, as you can see kind of in the center here. We've also done bingo. incentivizing those connections for people to meet with one another. There's really a whole, I could talk for probably another 5-10 hours about gamification specifically, but this just gives you a little peek into how we're connecting them together. All right. So I know that that part was really fun, but now we're going to talk about investing in your audience. I will say, in hearing feedback as we're talking through hybrid with our different sponsors, the most popular question we're getting is about budget. So I'll have to plan for 2 events? No, you will not have to plan for 2 events, but you do have to make considerations for both atmospheres and what is a priority to you as an event planner. Having a virtual audience can save money on on-site costs, and it can also open up more sponsorship opportunities to leverage your event prospectus. Here at MeetingPlay, we also like to consider our mobile app and our platform married. And so all the connection and functionality is flowing between the 2 of them, so that shared experience can help you be a little more budget efficient. Why it's important to invest in your audience is kind of bringing us back to that broader audience. Maybe you can only have 50 people on site, it's not 500. Maybe you were going for 1,200 on site, but you have to bring it down to 50. But online, you can have as many people as you want. Is this a ticketed event? Is this an internal event, but you have a global presence for your employees? You really can bring anyone in to be involved and have a good time, but they don't all have to be there present in person. And we have a wealth of tools, especially for those internal events, to keep everyone engaged, or maybe do some meet and greets with teams that might not have actually ever met one another. We also have successfully, we as MeetingPlay and Eventry have also successfully uploaded or hosted over 350,000 attendees in one virtual conference. So worrying about, can the platform handle X amount of attendees? The answer is yes. We can bring in any level of audience that you're going to need to bring to your event. And another one of our most recent career fairs had up to 85,000 people, and we were able to support hosting interviews in platform for those companies that were looking to hire on new people, and we found great success in that event as well. So you never want to limit yourself to the number of people that you can fit in a ballroom. And then finally, investing in your audience, bringing us back to the sponsorship opportunities. And I don't want to get on this too much because I know that we do have a session coming up in the coming weeks about this topic specifically, but outfitting in-person booths has a long history of success, but in the virtual atmosphere, elevated branding, engagement, and connections doesn't have boundaries. And so we really can formulate your vision to make sure that your speakers, sponsors, and exhibitors are all getting exactly what they're looking for. So finally, let's talk about that embracing the new normal. Always plan to pivot. Even if you're not planning a hybrid event, we live in a new world where rules and expectations surrounding public health and attendee expectations are the most important thing. Planning from the start to support both a live and virtual environment opens up the door to a larger global audience and more sponsorship opportunities, less budget surprises, and better tech preparedness. Investing in that experience. Some of the most successful events we've helped put on have been the hardest to plan. Investing doesn't always mean money. What we want you to invest in is the time and the detail to provide both audiences with a phenomenal experience, to think outside the box and to get creative with what you are able to provide in this new normal. Selecting the right partners. The partner vetting process is one of the hardest parts of event planning, but when you've done it properly and you've surrounded yourself with a team of true partners that are dedicated to making your event successful, whether you keep to the original plans or need to transition into a new format. Finding a good tech support for your event can also make or break the process. Ultimately, make it easier ultimately making it easier and harder to be successful. Your audience expectations have changed. This is a huge piece in what we're considering now. There's such a spectrum of expectations, comfort levels, wants and needs that happen at events now. Some attendees may never want to attend a live event again. And while others are chomping at the bit to be at your live shows, some may be expecting a safe check-in, overall event process, and equipped with COVID-19 best practices and protocols. Some may need a new type of engagement during an event. Whatever they need, be open-minded and creative with how you plan the events moving forward. They expect it now, and we as event planners must deliver. Finally, it's an easy one, guys. Let's have some fun. I know it's cheesy, but in the past 2 years have been so hard on the event planning industry. Live events are coming and going quicker than we can plan them. New variants are always threatening to arise, but now you've lived through it and you know what tools are available in your toolbox. Take advantage of them and have fun planning your events again. Everyone is here to help you, and there is no information, there's not more information better than where you need to be. So we can all bring ourselves together to talk about what visions you have, what tech is out there, what tech can be created for you to make sure that every single time that you're having a planning experience, you're getting exactly what you're looking for, and you're giving the attendees exactly what they're looking for when they come to your event. All right, so now we can move on to Q&A. So I think Lauren is going to hop back on and kind of talk us through some things here.
Hey, Brianna, that was great.
Thanks.
Thank you for going over all of that. And I know that this topic has been something that, from an industry standpoint, is something everyone's dealing with right now. From even, from our perspective, working with MeetingPlay plus Eventry, it's definitely, real world for us right now. And as we wrap our heads around it and experience it together, I think people do have a lot of questions. So for this session especially, we want to make sure that we're kind of making it more of a conversation and asking like the nitty-gritty questions that we're not necessarily able to cover during the broader conversation. So we've had a lot of really good Q&As come in. We'll go through them. It can be, conversational. And if, we haven't answered your question during Q&A, please feel free to keep adding them in the chat. I'll be kind of watching what everyone's saying, so I can always bring that up as well. So let's just kind of dig into these. The first one is interesting because from an event tech perspective, you have a lot of experience in this, Brianna, but it's how do you help your attendees learn all of these new tools? And kind of what are the best practices surrounding that? Because if you think about it, if you're going from a live event, there's tools on site that people are typically able to use. There's something that you can kind of think about that's happened over and over at conferences that you've experienced. But whenever you pivot to virtual or hybrid and to bridge those two audiences, if that's what you choose to do, we're bringing in an entirely different complexity of technology. And from an attendee perspective, it's kind of like, what do I do? It's not just a mobile app anymore. If you have like those pods that you were talking about, or you have the photo booths. So not only is it just using tech, but it's also kind of incentivizing people to use them and kind of break out of the box a bit. So from your experience, how have you done that? And how have you kind of helped our clients to coach them through coaching their audience?
That's a great question to have. And one thing that I will say I've noticed with our clients specifically that, again, are kind of planning for hybrid from the start, because the platform and the mobile app are connected, a lot of those tools, the ARS tools, the engagement tools, the gamification is all kind of transferred over. So even though they're in a different format and they're looking at a platform now, they're not necessarily seeing something new. It's just refaced. It's gotten a facelift. It's moved around a little bit, but all of those tools that they know how to use are still there. And then moving to kind of on how do we train users to kind of get this new normal. A best practice that we've seen is when that attendees have only been on site for an event and they're now moving to virtual, some of our clients have sent out a how-to or a welcome to our virtual atmosphere. And it really calls out during kind of that pre-event phase, all the things that they're likely going to see and want to check out and engage with. Putting in there that you might have a swag store, going through and participating in all the different actions that'll earn you points could get you objects. And that's really going to amp up their excitement about being at your event and taking part in all of these different features that you've built into this space.
Definitely. Yeah, I think gamification has been something so tried and true. And from a virtual perspective, we've seen that work every time. But in hybrid, it's especially cool because you can kind of bridge your audiences that way, but also it's like kind of breaks the ice a bit. You know what I mean? Everyone's kind of afraid to be the first person to do something or to try something. So I guess like a t-shirt or something fun.
Super easy.
And it works. It really does.
It does. And I think if we even think about it from like a simpler standpoint, shout out to all my fellow millennials out there. I know when you were in college, it was the most fun thing if your professor decided to use Kahoot or some type of app game, because you don't just want to sit in class listening to your professor speak. You want to be doing something. And so to be able to engage on a different level and basically be awarded for those engagements really is going to incentivize not only morale, but also behaviors. Kind of talking to that gamification that we were looking at, you can prioritize in your event what's most important to you. And through that incentivification, you can send people to different aspects of the site to make sure that you're getting your attendees to do what you want them to do.
Yeah, that's really cool. Awesome. Well, next up, we have a variety of budget questions, which I think is, a given considering pivoting that's really what we've been hearing a lot as well. Even in our first session, people are like, hybrid equals budget strains and hybrid equals you have to plan 2 events now. And where that may be true, there's ways around it. And there's ways that I know that we've worked with clients to kind of walk through that process. So, we have one that says budget related, any tips on how to decrease costs on tech in order to provide a great experience for both audiences? It's a good one.
That is a good one. So in terms of decreasing costs, I don't think that it's decreasing the costs such as setting what your priorities are. If your on-site attendees are your priority and you're only creating maybe a webinar format for your attendees, that's going to save you a lot of money because you haven't built in all the same functionality. But then again, you're also prioritizing your on-site attendees versus your virtual attendees. Now, in the space that we're in now, there are so many partners out there that can provide different levels and different budgets out there. So you definitely want to talk through, set your budget. What is it? What are you willing to spend? And then what items and features, what wish list do you have? So that you can take that wish list to each of your partners and say, these are our most important things. And this is our budget. And having that conversation ready to go is going to really help you and your partners down the line, because there are ways and different considerations or compromises that partners can make. And they can also talk you through solutions that would be a better fit, using something like sponsorships, for example. Maybe your sponsors aren't necessarily paying for their space. So there are ways to create a more limited space for them where it's just a logo perhaps, and that's not going to be something that is as expensive as doing a fully outfitted booth with the office hours, with the book a meeting, with the on-site piece. So you want to talk through what you want and what your vision is, and then you can talk about costs after that.
And does time frame sometimes does that impact the way budgets work? And I know that's kind of a loaded question because yes and no, I guess it depends on their needs. But let's say you have to pivot and you're 3 weeks out to preserve your entire event. I'm assuming that would have to impact budget a bit.
Definitely. And so, planning maybe even beforehand, getting cost actuals from vendors, even though you don't plan to go virtual, but knowing what that cost might be if you had to is a good start there. But things that you'll have to consider from the partner's perspective is dates that they've already given to other people. These partners that you work with, they do have resources that they're using. And so they're prioritizing on their calendar those clients that have already have contracted with them for those days. So if you're planning something 3 weeks, 2 weeks out, it might not be the best case scenario, or they might not even have those days available. This happens with production companies. This happens with your virtual partners. But having that conversation beforehand is going to give you a good idea so you're not caught off guard down the road. Another piece here, though, is actually working from the start with a partner that can do both. So if you are working with an on-site partner that does virtual platforms, you can kind of be having that conversation along the way with them and be telling them, hey, things aren't looking so good. We're kind of talking about this, and they'll be able to give you a realistic expectation of when the decision needs to be made with them. If you're working with an on-site only or a virtual only partner, and then you kind of pivot and have to have a fresh conversation with someone, they're not going to be as invested in your success. And that's, I guess that's not necessary too, actually. Everyone in our industry, I feel, is always invested in everyone's success, but it's going to be really hard to catch them up to speed on everything that's already happened. So working with someone that is full service and has both of those is going to kind of remove some of that headache.
Yeah, I agree. And I think we've kind of hit a few things during your presentation that are somewhat buzzwords, but they're really just the new words that we've been talking about in the industry today, which is pivot, the new normal, and hybrid. And all of those are, terms that we've used to kind of create this new event industry that we're in. But I think pivot is really kind of like a reactive term that we're using right now in the industry. And like what you said, we're really kind of thinking for the future of, we need to be planning for plan A and B, which is for both virtual and live. I think you touched on this as well, as far as a attendee expectation. We're dealing with a lot right now as far as an attendee. Like, some people are just ready to get back to live, they're ready to go. And I think that's phenomenal. I think event planners are thrilled to hear that. But in addition, we also have people that, one, are, still concerned about, the health, their health when going to an event. How does that impact it? Where people are loving sitting on the couch watching your event. You know what I mean? It makes it a lot easier. Or you can attend during the day. You have, it's an entire kind of, the list goes on situation. But, pivot will likely go away eventually, hopefully, where we're not really having to deal with this like knee-jerk reaction midway through planning. We're more so kind of thinking from the start, from a budget perspective, from a planning perspective, a content perspective, that yes, we need to be kind of thinking about what the attendee wants at this point. And from a budget perspective, and we've seen this, it doesn't have to be like an insane event every time. It can be done really well and still have really happy attendees from the live and virtual kind of experiences, but it's really revolves around what you put into it and the time. So budget comes in, but you kind of have to get creative a little bit right now and work with your event tech partners and partners in general. It's not just event tech. Anyone that you have to deal with during the event planning process, is everyone kind of has to join hands and say, here's the end goal. Here's how we have to get creative in this new normal. I'm using that term again. And here we go. But now that that's happened, and now that we're going through it, kind of like the virtual, experience that we got 2 years ago, we're going to be pros at this. And hopefully the word pivot will kind of be a thing of the past, and we'll be better planners from it.
Absolutely. And I think adding it to our planning and our mindset that, there is a part of the world that's now forever going to be virtual. But if we think about it in this way, how cool is it, right? How cool is it to be virtual all the time, to be able to connect with people on a global level? I mean, we've been attending events that are happening global, and we're able to contact and work with clients that are in Europe or in APAC, South America, and give them the best virtual experience, all from not being on site. And I think it really broadens our horizon in what is capable in these events. There are events that, I had to pick and choose what I was going to before pre-COVID. I wanted to go to this trade show in Spain, but I have this going on in Denver, and I'm not able to go. But now I can at least join in for a day. I can connect. I can check out the sessions. And so I don't want to add to the FOMO topic, but we don't really have that anymore in this space. We really can all be together globally on this new normal. And I will just say it, I prefer it. I love the new normal. I love being able to kind of jump around and participate in all of these different events all the time. It's a new space, but it's a really cool space.
Yeah, I completely agree. I'm with you there, because I also love what live event brings. I think live events, I like being able to meet people face to face, shake their hand. I like seeing people live, but I've really benefited a lot just as an event professional from attending virtual too, from the same reasons you have. So I think it's really great. We have a question from Kyle. We're kind of merging over to sponsorship things now, which is, a natural progression. So how can planners make sure to best deliver sponsored needs and benefits in a hybrid event model? So pros and cons to a virtual presence versus an on-site booth.
Totally. So that can be a lot to unpack, because there are so many pros to both situations. and more cons by limiting one or the other. So just like you said in talking about this new normal, like there are those of us that want to be back in person. We love seeing people, being able to shake their hand, being able to grab a coffee or grab lunch. And there's just a different feel to being, in someone's presence, right? And we miss that piece. But when we kind of talk about this broader audience or excluding people who don't have that same comfort that we do, I don't want to bring it down to fairness, but we want to be able to see everyone and hear everyone and have everyone's opinion and voice being heard in these situations. So, if somebody is, we'll say they're taking care of a child or they're immunocompromised, but they're a huge player in this space and they want to go to this event, but they can't. We want to be able to offer them all of the same things. And that might not just be an attendee. That can be an exhibitor. An exhibitor, best salesperson on your team is immunocompromised. And that's okay. They can still be the virtual exhibitor and they can be someone who's giving demos and reaching out. And you, from that virtual booth, can connect with people who are on site or people who are virtual and, saying, hey, Lauren, it was awesome to talk to you. I hope that you will swing by our in-person booth. I know the team members there, they're all stars. And so I think there are pros and cons to both situations if you're only doing one. So if you are doing only on site, you are limiting kind of that audience and that ROI that you could potentially have. And if you're only doing virtual, we're missing out on that magic sometimes, the magic of being in person and the magic of shaking someone's hand or meeting a colleague that you've never actually met before because we all live remote now. So I would say that those are kind of the pros and cons, but I don't want to take too much away from this topic because I know that Meg Fazy is doing another session where she's really talking about how we can enhance the experience for our sponsors in both spaces. So she's going to have really all the answers on that topic, and I don't want to take any of her thunder away.
Yep, I was going to say that. Meg is like our guru around that topic. She's amazing, and I can't wait to hear everything that she brings to the table in regards to that. I think just from a sponsorship perspective, you have two environments now to take advantage of. And people every single day, whether it be on-site partners or virtual tech partners, they're coming up with really great opportunities for your sponsors and exhibitors every day. I know MeetingPlay has done some of the most robust things that I've ever seen in regards to exhibiting booths. And it's just been really cool to see that that journey from live where we were a couple years ago and what we've been able to do since. So I can't wait to see Meg and what she has to say.
She's going to be a great class.
Yeah. Awesome. We have, a couple more here. So one of them, this is actually a good one too. So how can we see more examples of successful pivots done by MeetingPlay Plus Eventry? This is a good question for you.
Great question for me. So as being part of an amazing sales team here at MeetingPlay Eventry, definitely following up with our team. During this event, we're having a hallway chatter after this, but also reaching out to us through email. I think our contact information is in all of our bios. We would love to take people through a full demo, completely catered to what their needs are. If you only have a 250 person event all on site, that's one type of conversation. You have 30,000 attendees coming to a virtual only event. That's another conversation. And so we want to be able to walk you through all the different situations that we see because we do have such a variety of clients and a variety of experiences. I think our favorite word here at MeetingPlay is custom. We love to really make sure that that experience is unique to each client. And so as you move through all of these events, you're not going to see something that's the same. We want to make sure that the magic of it being your event and your space and your attendees, and we want to give that to everyone. And so I would say we can definitely show you some other examples, but the example that we might show you, Lauren, are completely different from what we might show Matt, or completely different from what we might show Frank. And so we want to make sure that you're getting the example. Or if you just want to walk through, all of the amazing and magic things that MeetingPlay Eventry has done, we can do that too. But the advice I would give is reaching out to our team members. Matt Dodson, our channel partner manager. Kyle Shaughnessy is one of our business development managers here on the team. He's in platform today. So following up with them and setting up time with them to kind of have this conversation where you walk through that wish list, maybe that budget, and kind of talk about those things, and they can show you the world of MeetingPlay Eventry.
That's awesome. And then afterwards, are you able to post your LinkedIn info for people to contact you as well? I'm sure they'd like to chat.
Totally. I'm really getting into LinkedIn now. I wasn't always a huge LinkedIn person, but I think I'm finally figuring out its flavor. So I will absolutely share my contact information for anyone. People can also message me in platform. I'm happy to connect with anybody that's here today.
Awesome. We have a couple more. We have some coming in right now. So one is on gamification. This is from Claire. So what are your strategies for events when you have a wide range of age, not just millennials? That's not one I've heard before.
Oh, that's actually not one that I've heard before. So I would think that this is about kind of exposing people to virtual platforms and all the different tools that are in there. And so coming back to kind of sending out that welcome package, just like we did when we were on site. You know, you sent, hey, this is your schedule, and this is your map, and this is how you connect with people, and these are the sponsors that are coming. You can actually send that virtually and say, hey, you know, just letting everyone know you can play games. We have a social wall. You know, one of the, I think Matt always talks about this specifically, is in some of our social feeds, we've seen clients run fur baby challenges where people post images of their pets, and those can be upvoted. And the person with the most likes ends up as a winner and can get a gift card or something fun. So there are a lot of different ways that you can incorporate people from different age groups. And there are a variety of tools in the MeetingPlay Eventry toolbox for this. But I think what we would have to do is have a better understanding of maybe what experience you want to give to each of those users. Is it the same experience? Is it a little bit different? And talk through exactly what you want them to be engaging with.
That's great. Yeah, I know we've seen some really cool ones that, well, they're more so industry specific, but it's like we could do the, you know, walking them through the platform through things like you're talking about, or scavenger hunts throughout the platform, or, you know, things like that. I think some of those types of things are ageless. You know what I mean? It's just in the way that, like you said, communicate it and get people started on it, and then they're off to the races. So that's really great. I'm interested in actually like talking about that more and kind of doing my own research, because that's not something I've ever thought about before.
It's a great
we have one. Yeah, absolutely. We have one from Matt. So you mentioned MP did an event for 350,000 attendees. Is MeetingPlay plus Eventry a fit with smaller audiences? So let's say like 50 to 250 to 500 attendee formats.
Definitely. So we can really be a fit for all audience types. It really just depends, you know, what their budget is. It's the same thing as if you're planning 50 people being on site versus 50 people virtual. Same as if it's 100,000 people on site versus 100,000 virtual. So there are costs that need to be associated. And then the features that you want to be able to offer them. You know, is this just a webinar format? Is this a meet and greet with your teams? Is this an educational event where we're training teams or we're training people? Is it something like this where we're coming in for CMP credits and those types of things? So we really can do a variety. And now I'm kicking myself for not having talked about some of the smaller events that we've done. But it really is bringing us back to that custom space. You know, what is your event goal? What is your experience goal? And we'll talk you through and consult you on what you should be doing to achieve that.
Awesome. This is one that kind of comes in with that, but overall a pivot question. So what are the biggest hurdles that you've seen so far? Like, what are people struggling with right now?
Time is a huge one, and budget. Obviously, when we're not adequately pre-planning these things, event planners can get caught off guard by the costs that are associated with either going half, full, virtual. And so working with those partners that can do both and can kind of consult you through the process is really a great way to start off. The time thing is really dependent on your complexity. Is it just a webinar? Is it something that we can kind of turn on for you in your meeting? And that's it, but there's something else going on site that's a little more complex. I think you as a planner need to stay realistic with what kind of time you're working in for what you want to get out of virtual or out of on site. I think that our timelines that we talked about before, you know, going from virtual to on-site, that can be 12 weeks to 6 months. That's a very difficult process to go through. And I think everyone as an event planner, a pre-COVID event planner, knows what goes into planning a full on-site event. Then going from on-site to virtual, there are plans that needs to, there's tons of code, there's tons of testing, there's content that needs to be uploaded. There's a lot that goes into putting on a virtual event, even if it is also hybrid. Our team can definitely talk you through, based on the needs or the wish list that you have, what a realistic time frame is for you. I mean, we can do something as soon as 6 weeks, but it might not be what your vision is if your vision is really complex with heavy features and custom graphics. And so coming to the call with as much as you can have prepared is the best way to start.
That's great. This is a kind of a follow-up question from Brandy. So what are your recommendations for getting stakeholder buy-in to pivot?
So we're talking like, as a company, I'm an event planner and I want to make sure that the investors in this event understand the importance. That's a great question.
That's a big one.
That's a big one. So I would say planning for a hybrid from the start is a great place to start, and kind of maybe laying out the pros and cons of all situations. On-site only, hybrid, virtual only. The pros and cons, the costs associated. And I think if you show them all of the benefits of hybrid, you'll see that, you might not be spending as much in the hybrid space as you think you are. And especially when you're planning out from the beginning, but also showing the benefit of being able to offer these additional sponsorships or these additional attendee types. Is this a paid event? If it's a paid event, there can be really heavy return on investments because you're able to open up the scope of audience to it and they're buying more tickets. So there's a lot to go into investing, but I would say proposals. Always putting that proposal together, bringing it to those stakeholders and saying, based on laying out all the pros and cons of this situation, this is the best one, and this is why. And our team or other great partners out there can help prepare you for these conversations as you're having them. So don't feel like you're, as an event planner, an island out there by yourself, just kind of having to decide what the pros and cons are. It's our job to be able to pivot. It's our job to be able to provide both on-site and virtual experiences. So call us and say, hey, this is what's going on. This is what I'm thinking. And we're happy to help you talk through all the situations and all the costs associated and all the benefits to your company.
That's awesome. I think that's a really great place to end too, because we have a couple more questions that came in that are all really good. And we also have our hallway chatter that's open after this for those who can attend. And it's literally like this conversation plus like all the people that want to join and chat with us. We'll have Brianna's going to come over there. I'll be over there. We have a couple members coming over from the MeetingPlay Plus Eventry team to chat about hybrid. So if you have other questions, for those questions that we weren't able to grab yet from this, we'll be answering those there and just kind of having a conversation like we are now. But thank you so much, Brianna, for this. I think this was a really hard topic to cover considering all that is happening in the industry right now. And I think you did a really great job. So thank you so much for speaking with us today.
Thank you so much for having me, Lauren. This was great.
Awesome. Well, we have our next week is coming up. We have Amanda Dennis from Type A covering reskilling the events workforce. Same time, same place, next Thursday, 1 p.m. Eastern. Be sure to grab today's downloadable content. So we have a checklist that goes over pivoting, everything you need to know and think of. We also have last session's downloadable content as well if you weren't able to grab them. Also really great checklists considering kind of timelines that we've talked about today and goal setting. So all of it goes really well together. Have fun with that and enjoy. Again, all of these sessions will give 1 CE credit per each. So after the 6-week course, we'll be handing those out to everyone. So please keep that in mind. Please join us again. And then we will see you kind of over in hallway chatter. If you are sharing anything about us on social media, please use hashtag MPA University, and we'll be sure to like and retweet, respond as we will. And so there you have it. Thank you so much again, Brianna, and we will see you guys next week.
Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a good one.